All right, so it's time for us to begin our journey down networking, and there's obviously a lot to cover here for the exam. If you look on screen, we've got this network overview image that Microsoft always presents us with, and you can see more on this at the link on the bottom of the screen. I do encourage you to check that out. There's just a ton of documentation Microsoft provides around networking. But if you look at the image on screen, on the left-hand side, we have our on-premises network with options for like an encrypted tunnel, direct connection. Over to the right-hand side, which is our Azure network. And this right-hand side is where we're going to be focused on primarily as we work through this module. And there's all sorts of concepts there, but let's start with the VNet first of all. The VNet is one of the core pieces, and it has a number of capabilities that Microsoft provides for us to utilize with VNets in Azure. And if you look on screen, we've got a boundary there. So we've got our VNet boundary. Inside there, I've got two subnets, subnet A, subnet B, and I've got a couple of virtual machines in each one. Each virtual machine has a network interface card that connects it to the subnet, and then by default these subnets can route to each other because they're in the same VNet. And then if we want to, we can put an NSG, a network security group, which we'll hear more about later, around these to say, okay, I want to filter traffic between them. So this is kind of the core concept of just if I want to put machines out in Azure, VNets are the way to do it. So what are all those capabilities? Let's just kind of summarize them and work through this list. First of all, they are isolated. VNets are isolated from one another unless we choose to connect them to each other. So VNet isolation is very important, particularly in multi-tenant scenarios. They all provide internet access. So if we want to connect these VMs to the internet, we can do that by default unless we choose to restrict that, but that is available for us. They allow us to connect multiple Azure resources, not just virtual machines. We could put cloud services like web apps and other services in there. We can plug them into the same VNet as our virtual machines. Everybody can share that networking boundary if they wish. The VNet connectivity, I kind of mentioned briefly, again, we can chain these if we want to, so we can connect VNets to other ones, and there's various methods to go about doing that connectivity. We can provide on-premises connectivity, so we can allow VNets to route to on-premises, as you saw in that original diagram. We can apply traffic filters via network security groups. That's kind of those shields again that you can see on the screen there. And finally, VNets provide a number of capabilities around routing. So we have default routes available. We can also define user-defined routes. And so we can basically customize this to manipulate it in a way that meets the needs of our organization. If we look at some of the key points, let's just hammer these home. Number one, VNets are a primary building block for Azure networking. So just think of this as the core for everything that we do out in Azure and all the services we want to connect together. It's a private network in Azure based on an address space prefix, and this is something that we define. We create subnets in our VNet with our own IP ranges, so we need to plan for them. We do have to think about things like overlap in address space, much like we would on premises as well. We can choose to bring our own DNS or use Azure provided DNS, and there's more to come on that a little bit later on. And finally, we can choose to connect the network to on-premises or the internet if we wish to. But hopefully this gives you a brief overview. I think if you just understand these 5 points and work through the demos, I think you'll get a lot out of this and see very quickly how easy it is to connect all the pieces of Azure networking together.